right, well, welcome. Thank you for being here. My name is Serafin Sanchez. I'm an Ableton brand manager and certified trainer, and I'm really excited to show you what's new in Live 10. Overall in Live 10, you're going to be able to create with a broad, more sophisticated palette of sound from some new instruments, audio devices, and a new curated sound library. You'll also be able to work faster and stay in the flow with a multitude of workflow improvements. You're going to be able to do more away from the computer with added functionality to push, and you'll be able to expand what's been possible with a fully integrated Max for Live. So there's so many new things in Live 10. I won't be able to show you everything, so I encourage you to download Live 10 and try it for yourself. So let's make some music together and dig in. Usually when I start making music, maybe you're the same way, you start in the browser. You find some samples and sounds that you really like. Right off the bat, you can see something new in the browser, which is this section right here. This is called Collections. So this is 7 customizable categories to help you find and tag your favorite things fast. So for me, my categories are favorites, drum kits, loops, Max for Live, new EP, synths, and wavetable. But this could be whatever you want. So you can right-click or control-click and rename these categories to be whatever suits your workflow. So the way it works is, let's say there's a sound that you use all the time. You can right-click and attach it to any of the categories that you set. You can also use these numbers on the right that correspond to QWERTY keys that allow you to, the QWERTY key 1, for example, will tag it to the favorites category. Something else really cool in the browser is if I head down to the packs section, when you're connected to the internet, this will show you all the available packs that you have in your Ableton account that maybe that you haven't downloaded yet or installed. So now you can download and install straight from your browser. It also shows you how big the pack is, so you can determine whether you have enough hard drive space. It also shows you available updates. So maybe there's some packs that have sound content updates that you just haven't downloaded yet. So there's a bunch of new sound content new in Live 10. All of the new packs are curated collections of samples, instruments, and clips that have some kind of similar sonic characteristic to it. There's also some updates to the Essential Instruments collection. So some amazing sounded multi-sampled electric keyboards and multi-sampled acoustic drums. So I'm gonna grab one of the new drum kits and put it into the track. Great. So first thing I like to do, just like when you have a new instrument or a drum kit, you kind of play around until you find a part that you like. So I'll play on the pads. Just find the layout of the land here, see which pad goes to which sample. And then you just start jamming until you find a part that you like. So I'll just play around until I find out something that gets me a little bit further in the song. Okay, so maybe a groove kind of like that. So the next logical step would be to turn on the metronome, figure out what tempo you played, and then press record. And a lot of times when the record light's on, you're not as relaxed and you don't play as well, or even remember the part that you played when you were just playing around. So in Live, there's a new feature that solves that problem. It's called Capture. So here at the top, this is the Capture button. And the way it works is that Capture is always listening to incoming Midi notes. And if the transport's off, it'll find what tempo that you played, and it'll also bring back the last phrase that you played. So let's see what happens when I press Capture. Cool, so it found the last 4 bars that I played. And if I look ahead, I can also see this was me noodling around on the pad, so it's always listening to what you play. So now that I have some drums that I put in, let's make this drum sound just a little bit beefier, a little bit more present. So to do this, I'm gonna bring in a new audio device called Drum Bus. So I'll head to Audio Effects, Drum Bus, and drag it in on the track. So here's Drum Bus. This is a small kind of one-stop shop drum processing tool to add a lot of new characteristics to your drums. So for example, I want to get the kick just to sounding a little bit bigger, a little bit beefier. I'm going to use this feature called Boom. So now I can dial in that resonant frequency here. And then I can also shorten the decay time too, to make it a little bit more punchy. what I like about here in the bottom, this is a forced to MIDI note. So let's say, for example, I'm in the key of C. So now if I press forced to MIDI, this will select this frequency to be exactly the musical note C. So without drum bus, and then with drum bus. Cool. So the crunch, I'm going to add a little bit of presence in those mid-high frequencies, add a little bit of distortion. And then also use the built-in transient shaper to either roll it back and make it really tight and punchy. Or I can open it up. Kind of accentuate all the sustain of the drums. There's also a built-in drive, so I have 3 different types of distortion: soft, medium, and hard. All right, so without drum bus and with drum bus. Cool, so quickly get my drums to sound a little bit bigger, more present. Great, so now that we have a drum idea, let's create a bass line. So for the bass part, I'm going to bring in a new synthesizer in Live 10 called Wavetable. So I'll head to Instruments, Wavetable, and create a track for it. So what I really like about Wavetable is I can quickly create complex, sophisticated sounds, cutting-edge modern sounds, and like those classic vintage tones. Plus, there's 2 analog model filters, a powerful modulation matrix, and then I can show everything on screen at once. One of the collections that I have is called Wavetable. So these are some of my favorite Wavetable presets that come with Wavetable. Great, so if I made a sound, the first thing I like to do is open up the expanded view to see all the parameters on screen at once. So if we start here, this is Oscillator 1. There's a bunch of different categories that have different types of tables. Right now we're in the vintage category. I can use these left and right arrows to preview some of the different wavetables. I can also change the wavetable position by grabbing inside the table, or use the wavetable position slider. So there's a lot of different categories. Another one I really like is the complex category. And then there's also your basic wavetables. Great. There's also some really fun built-in oscillator effects. So right now we're in the modern category. Effects like warp and fold. You also have your FM effects and your classic effects such as pulse width and sync. Cool. So down here on the left, this is your filter section. So they have 2 analog model filters that can be run in split, parallel, or stereo, parallel, or split. Over here to the right are some really fun new Unison modes. So you have your classic Unison mode. Some of my other favorites are phase sync, and then position spread. We'll bring it back to classic. Here in the center, this is the modulation matrix. So the way that this works is, let's say, for example, I wanted to modulate pulse width by LFO 2. So all I need to do is select pulse width, and that shows up down here in the modulation matrix automatically. And then from there, I can dial in which target I want to modulate it with. So if right here, I can assign it to LFO 2. Cool. What I also really like about Wavetable is that everything that I can do here on the screen, I can also see on push. So if I switch over to push, I can select Wavetable, and then let's go to the oscillators category. From here, I can see a visualization of all of the same tables and switch between them. If I went to my filters category, I can see exactly what the filter's doing. And then you can even use the modulation matrix from here. So if I went back to oscillators and I touch pulse width, I can now add it to the matrix and then assign it to any one of those parameters. Okay, great. So now we have a drum part and a bass part. Let's go ahead and beef up the sound of the bass just a little bit. So for this, I want to bring in a brand new audio effect called pedal. All right, so pedal brings in the sounds of analog stomp boxes into live. Pedals run in 3 different modes. So the first mode is overdrive. It'll also be a distortion. And then fuzz mode. I think I'm feeling overdrive for this one. One thing I like to do is I like to bring in the sub button to kind of bring all that low end back into the mix. Great, so now we have a sound that we like. Let's go ahead and make that bass part. Again, so I was playing around, I found a sound that I like, I found a part that I made. I wasn't recording, so for this, I'm gonna bring and use capture again. So you can also use capture from push. So the way that capture works on push is if you hold down record and press new, it'll bring your last idea. So there's everything that I just played even though I didn't press record. I'm gonna bring the start back to the beginning and use this idea. Cool, so we have a bass part going, we have a drum groove. I'm gonna bring in some harmony now. So for this, I'm gonna go to a category in my collections called New EP. And these are just sounds that I've made and gathered that I wanna use for a new track. So I'm gonna bring in this sound to the next track. And then to input this, I'm gonna show you a brand new step sequencer to push that makes sequencing chords really, really fun. So if I open up push, it defaults to the push keyboard view. And if I press layout once, I get into the melodic sequencer. And if I press layout one more time, I can see a brand new sequencer inside of push. And the way that it works is the bottom half of push is the keyboard view, and the top half is a step sequencer. So for example, all I need to do is press a chord, and then press how I want to sequence it. So for this, I want to sequence these as 1/8 notes. And then I just draw in exactly where I want these notes to be. I'm gonna press a different chord. A third chord. And then maybe that one there. Cool. Another new update in Live 10 for push is that, so I'm in the sequencer view right now. If I go into clip view, I can actually see individual notes per step. So I get a lot of control over the exact notes that I'm putting in push. So if I hold down a sequence, it zooms in onto that step so I can see every single note. It's also reflected down here in the keyboard. So I can see that step has these 4 notes. So let's say I wanted to take away a note. I can see which note I'm taking away, or if I wanted to add a note, I can see what notes I'm adding. So it gives me a lot of control on inputting in notes inside of push. Great, let's bring in a brand new track. So I'm gonna hit add track, go to my collections. So my collections is also available from Push. And go to that new EP category and bring in another sound. So again, I'm playing around with sound. I didn't record it. I'm going to use capture to bring the idea back in. So here's the capture. Great. So I have 4 ideas going. It'd be nice to start understanding the relationships and how these different parts work with each other. So if I double click the drum clip and then I shift and hold the bass clip, I can fold these together and see both clips at the same time. So this is a new feature in Live 10, multi-clip MIDI editing. So it helps me understand the relationships between up to 8 different clips at the same time and allow me to edit all of these in one single place. So now I can see that this top loop is all of the drums. The second loop is all of the bass notes. So I can move, let's say, this bass note to line up with the kick drum. If I add all these clips together, I can sort between the different clips between these braces. So here's drums, bass, harmony, and melody. One other thing I can see now is that the harmony and the melody are kind of in the same octave. So maybe I want to take the melody, boost it up an octave, give a little bit more clarity in the mix. So with these 4 ideas, I'm going to select and copy them all and bring them into the arrangement view so I can start to flesh out an arrangement. So one thing that I do a lot in arrangement view is detailed editing for automation. So adding breakpoints, recording automation, and editing automation in Live 10 just got a lot easier. So for one, there's a dedicated view for arrangement. And so you can get to that by pressing the automation button, or you can press the A key, which will allow you to open up all views just for automation. So let's say on this track right here, I'll solo it, and I want to automate the filter frequency. So I can press the filter frequency. It automatically comes up in the device chooser. Now in Live 10, all I need to do is double click anywhere on the track, and it'll automatically make a new breakpoint. So I can put one there, one there, one there, one there. So I don't have to press a breakpoint on the red line and move it up or down. I can just press it exactly where I want it to go in the track. Another workflow improvement that has to do with automation is that any of these breakpoints now, I can see the value by hovering over it. And if I wanted to move it to the left or right, they're now quantized to the grid. So in this case, I can move it to the right or the left, and it stays exactly on this 16th note. Moving that value up or down, you can see there's a black line that appears. This is the vertical assistant that helps me control the value as I move it up or down. So let's say I wanted to have that exact same automation lane and copy it to a different track. So this track right here, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to select the filter frequency, copy all of these breakpoints, right-click, copy, and paste. And I'll solo both of these tracks. Great. Also in Live 10, there's been some big improvements to Max for Live. So one, Max for Live is now fully integrated. So what that means is there's no separate download, there's no separate install. Max is always running in the the background, and that means things run a lot faster, a lot less CPU. The There's also been some improvements to our favorite Max for Live devices. One of those is the Lfo device. So if I open up the browser, one of my collections is Max for Live, so I'm going to bring in the Lfo device on the bass track. And what you notice is that this Max for Live device looks a lot like a native live device, and it just opened a lot faster. So nothing opened in the background, it opens as it should. Specifically with the Lfo device, if I look to the right, now with Lfo, I can map up to 8 different parameters on a single Lfo device. So it gives me a lot more power to that specific device. Also in Max for Live, there's been support for multi-channel audio with a brand new surround panner, which is a ton of fun. There's also been support for sysex to work with your external Midi gear. In addition, there's some brand new Max for Live devices. One of my favorite ones is this one called Shaper. So what Shaper does is allows you to map all of these customizable envelopes to anything in your live set. So let's say I mapped Shaper to the filter frequency of wavetable. So I can use any of the custom of the shapes that come with Shaper. Or I can take it off the grid and draw these to be whatever I like. Cool. So I'm getting to a point where I want to maybe take this project with me, bring it in my car, listen to it on my phone, take it away from the studio. I'm going to do one more touch-up. I'm going to go to the audio effects and bring in a device that's been updated in Live 10, which is the new utility device. So what's really cool about the new utility is that there's a dedicated mono switch, so I can preview all my mixes in mono. There's also a bass mono switch that lets me sum bass frequencies below this crossover point. So I'm going to put the utility on the master track and then export it. Another new addition in Live 10 is now you can export straight to MP3 and or WAV file at the same time. So if I want to take a small file with me, I can now do that directly from the export screen. Cool. So like I said, there's so many new things I can't show you. There's over 300 plus new improvements. One good place to keep track of them all is in Help View. There's a new lesson for what's new in Live 10. And from here, you can dive deep on some of the over 300 plus improvements.